In the latest twist of CBS's The Bold and the Beautiful, the tragic news of a plane crash has sent shockwaves throughout the Forrester family and beyond. Steffy Forrester, who had returned to town after several months away with her children, Kelly and Hayes, is now in a critical condition, fighting for her life after a horrific accident. The crash, caused by severe weather conditions, has left the Forrester family reeling with grief, fear, and a sense of helplessness. Steffy, who had been on a journey of personal growth and healing, had decided to bring her children back to Los Angeles after months of living away. Her return was meant to bring some sense of normalcy back into their lives, a chance to reconnect with family and rebuild relationships that had been strained over the years. However, fate had other plans. As the plane made its way back into town, disaster struck. The stormy weather, with its powerful gusts of wind and torrential rains, made it impossible for the pilots to maintain control. The plane crashed, and what followed was nothing short of a nightmare for Steffy and her family. In the aftermath of the crash, it became clear that the situation was dire. Steffy had been critically injured and was rushed to the hospital in a coma, with doctors uncertain of her survival. The news was devastating, especially to her husband, Finn. When Finn heard the news, he was struck with a shock unlike anything he had ever experienced. The woman he loved, the mother of his children, was now hanging on by a thread. It was a moment that seemed to freeze time for Finn as he raced to the hospital, desperate to be by Steffy's side. However, the tragedy did not end with Steffy's condition. Kelly, Steffy's young daughter, did not survive the crash. The injuries she sustained were too severe, and despite the best efforts of the medical team, she was declared dead upon arrival at the hospital. The loss of Kelly was a devastating blow, not only to Steffy, but also to the entire Forrester family. Kelly had been the light of their lives, a beacon of joy and hope, and now she was gone, leaving a gaping hole in the hearts of those who loved her. As Finn stood outside the emergency room, his heart heavy with sorrow and disbelief, there was one question that haunted him. Where was Hayes? Steffy's youngest child, Hayes, was still missing. Despite extensive search efforts and hope fading with each passing hour, there was no sign of him. Finn's mind raced with a mixture of hope and terror. Was Hayes alive? Was he trapped somewhere, waiting for a rescuer who might never come? The uncertainty and anguish of not knowing were unbearable. In the hospital waiting area, the Forrester family gathered, each member struggling to process the enormity of the situation. Ridge, Steffy's father, was a pillar of support for his daughter, but could not hide his own feelings of guilt and grief. Brooke, Steffy's mother, was equally distraught, unable to fathom the pain her daughter was enduring. The loss of Kelly and the uncertainty of Hayes' fate weighed heavily on them all. The Forrester family, who had weathered countless storms in the past, now found themselves facing one of the most devastating challenges they had ever encountered. The news of the crash quickly spread throughout Los Angeles, and soon the media was swarming the hospital. The story of Steffy's tragic accident, the loss of Kelly, and the search for Hayes became a sensational headline. Fans of the show and the Forrester family were gripped by the emotional turmoil of the events. The viewers, too, felt the pain of losing Kelly and the uncertainty of what would happen to Hayes. As Steffy lay unconscious in her hospital bed, her family held onto the hope that she would pull through. Finn, who had always been a rock for Steffy, struggled with the weight of the situation. He had been there for her through thick and thin, supporting her through every obstacle, but this time he was unsure if she could survive. The doctors were doing everything they could, but it was clear that Steffy was fighting for her life. Meanwhile, the search for Hayes continued, though the prospects of finding him seemed to grow slimmer with each passing hour. The family, the authorities, and the rescue teams were doing everything they could, but the harsh conditions and the vast wilderness made the search difficult. Finn, consumed by worrying, refused to give up hope. He believed with all his heart that Hayes was out there somewhere, waiting to be found. As the days passed, Finn remained at Steffy's side, refusing to leave her. He whispered words of encouragement to her, telling her that she had to fight for their family. He spoke of their love, their dreams for the future, and the life they still had ahead of them. Despite the heartbreak and devastation surrounding them, Finn refused to let go of the belief that Steffy could recover. His hope was the only thing that kept him going. The days turned into weeks, and while Steffy remained in critical condition, there was a glimmer of hope. Her condition slowly began to stabilize, though she was still unconscious. Finn, exhausted but determined, continued to stand by her side, hoping for a miracle. Ridge, Brooke, and the rest of the family rallied around Steffy, supporting her through this incredibly difficult time. Then, just when it seemed like the worst had passed, the news they had all been dreading came. Hayes' body was found. The boy, only a toddler, had not survived the crash. His tiny life had been cut short in the most tragic of circumstances. The Forrester family was devastated once more. The loss of Hayes was almost too much to bear. With Kelly gone and now Hayes, it seemed as though the Forrester family was being torn apart piece by piece. As Steffy's condition continued to improve, albeit slowly, she was forced to confront the loss of her children. The grief was unbearable, and the emotional toll it took on her was unimaginable. Yet, through the pain, she knew she had to stay strong for the sake of her family. She had to find a way to move forward, even though her heart was shattered. In the wake of the crash, the Forrester family found themselves coming together in ways they had never done before. The tragedy had forced them to reevaluate their priorities, to appreciate the love they had for each other, and to cherish every moment they had. It was a bittersweet realization, as they all knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The void left by the loss of Kelly and Hayes could never be filled, but the family would carry their memories with them, honoring their short lives as they tried to heal from the unimaginable pain. The road ahead was uncertain. Steffy's future, Finn's future, and the future of the Forrester family were all shrouded in uncertainty. But one thing was clear: they would face the challenges ahead together. The strength of their love for each other would be their guiding light, even in the darkest of times. In the face of such overwhelming tragedy, the Forrester family would find a way to survive, to rebuild, and to continue living, holding on to the memory of those they had lost and the hope for a brighter tomorrow. As Steffy continued her slow and painful recovery, there was a renewed sense of hope that she might pull through the ordeal. Her vital signs had started to stabilize, and though she remained unconscious, there was a flicker of possibility that she could regain consciousness and begin to heal, both physically and emotionally. Finn never left her side, sitting beside her day after day, whispering words of encouragement into her ear and praying for a miracle. His exhaustion was evident, but his determination to see Steffy survive kept him going. He believed in her strength, even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Amid the chaos and heartbreak, the search for Hayes continued relentlessly. Days turned into weeks, and just when hope seemed to be slipping away, a breakthrough finally occurred. A rescue team, following a new lead, discovered Hayes' small body lying among the wreckage of the crash site, partially covered in debris. While the boy had tragically lost his life, the discovery of his body brought a sense of closure to the Forrester family. The pain of losing him was unbearable, but at least they had found him. They could finally say goodbye, laying him to rest with the same dignity and love they had given Kelly. The memorial service for Hayes and Kelly was one of the most heart-wrenching moments in the history of the Forrester family. The grief that consumed everyone in attendance was overwhelming. Ridge, Brooke, and Finn struggled to hold it together as they faced the reality of their losses. The once lively, bustling Forrester household was now eerily silent, its halls echoing with sorrow and disbelief. Despite this collective mourning, there was one person whose pain was reaching an explosive breaking point: Liam Spencer. The loss of Kelly, in particular, had shattered him. His daughter, the light of his life, was gone, and he could hardly process the magnitude of what had happened. The anguish was too much for him to bear, and he quickly spiraled into a state of deep grief and frustration. He couldn't understand why this had happened, why his sweet Kelly had been taken from him in such a brutal and senseless way. His mind was consumed by guilt, anger, and confusion. Liam's grief manifested itself in a dangerous obsession. Unable to cope with the overwhelming pain, he began to act out in increasingly erratic ways. He would show up at Steffy's hospital room, yelling at the doctors, demanding to know what had happened, and blaming them for not doing enough to save Kelly. The nurses and doctors had to intervene, asking him to leave, but his frustration only deepened. Every time he saw Steffy, unconscious and vulnerable, the anger inside him grew. It was as though he couldn't see beyond the grief, unable to find a way to forgive the situation, let alone himself. At times, Liam would pace aimlessly through the Forrester mansion, his emotions boiling over. He would lash out at anyone who tried to comfort him, snapping at his family, his friends, and even Steffy's family. His behavior was erratic, and it scared everyone who witnessed it. Ridge and Brooke, who had once been his allies, found themselves at odds with him as his mental state deteriorated further. No one seemed to know how to help him, and the distance between Liam and his loved ones grew ever wider. One day, after yet another outburst at Steffy's bedside, Liam finally broke down in front of his father, Bill Spencer. In a rare moment of vulnerability, Liam confessed how deeply he was suffering. He had never felt such rage and helplessness. He hated himself for not being able to protect Kelly, for not being there when the plane had crashed. He felt like he had failed her, and that weight was too much for him to bear. Bill, who had always been a hard man, softened in the face of his son's pain. It was clear that Liam needed more than just his father's usual tough love. He needed understanding and support, but Liam wasn't sure he could ask for it. Bill tried his best to offer guidance, but even he could see that Liam was on the brink of a breakdown. "You're not alone in this, Liam. I know you feel like you should have been able to do something, but you couldn't have prevented this. You have to stop blaming yourself. Kelly wouldn't want you to destroy yourself over this," Bill said, his voice gruff but sincere. But Liam couldn't hear it. The guilt was too suffocating, and the anger was too intense. His mind replayed the tragic scene over and over. Kelly's smiling face, the sound of her laughter, her little hands reaching out to him, and then the void. The emptiness where her presence had once been. He felt like he had lost everything, and it was as if the world around him had ceased to make sense. Finn, who was dealing with his own grief, tried to extend an olive branch to Liam. He understood the pain of losing a child, and although it was Steffy who had been the one in the crash, the pain of losing Kelly and Hayes had left a mark on everyone who loved them. "Liam, I know you're hurting. We all are. But I need you to understand something. Kelly is gone, and nothing will bring her back. We have to keep going for the sake of our families, for Steffy, for the future. We can't let this destroy us. We have to support each other through this," Finn said, his voice shaking with emotion. But Liam wasn't ready to hear it. Instead, he withdrew further, retreating into himself. His obsession with his grief became all-consuming, and it was as though the weight of his sorrow had turned into a dark cloud that followed him everywhere he went. Meanwhile, Steffy's condition was still critical, and while she showed signs of improvement, the road to recovery was long and uncertain. Each day, Finn held on to the hope that she would wake up, that she would be able to find the strength to carry on and be there for their family. But Steffy, too, was deeply affected by the loss of her children. The grief was almost unbearable for her, but she had no choice but to fight. She clung to the memories of her children, keeping them alive in her heart as she struggled to find a way to move forward. The Forrester family had been torn apart by tragedy, and the damage seemed irreparable. But as Steffy's condition slowly improved, there was still a flicker of hope. The road ahead was filled with unimaginable challenges, but Steffy, Finn, and the rest of the family knew that somehow they would have to find a way to rebuild, to heal, and to honor the memory of Kelly and Hayes. They would have to learn to live with the pain, but in time, they would come to understand that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant finding a way to carry the love and the loss with them as they moved forward together. For Liam, the future remained uncertain. His heart was shattered, and he couldn't yet find a way to piece it together. The rage still boiled within him, and the void left by Kelly's death was too much to fill. His journey to healing would be a long and difficult one, but no matter how much Liam fought against it, he would eventually have to face the truth. The only way to move forward was to forgive himself and accept the painful reality that he had no control over the tragedy that had struck his family.
Oh.